Question 1. Assessment of how a community association manager should respond when a significant number of homeowners express strong opposition to a proposed amendment to the association's architectural guidelines, citing concerns about property values and personal preferences, while the board believes the amendment is necessary for aesthetic consistency and to maintain community standards. Option A. Present the homeowner's concerns and the board's rationale to the board, along with legal counsel's opinion on the amendment's validity and potential implications, facilitating a board discussion and vote. Option B. Inform the homeowners that their concerns are noted but will not influence the board's decision, as the board has the ultimate authority. Option C. Advise the board to approve the amendment without further discussion, as the board's authority supersedes individual homeowner objections. Option D. Immediately withdraw the proposed amendment to appease the vocal homeowners and avoid further conflict. Correct answer is A. Present the homeowner's concerns and the board's rationale to the board, along with legal counsel's opinion on the amendment's validity and potential implications, facilitating a board discussion and vote. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the fiduciary duties owed to the association with the diverse interests and perceptions of individual homeowners. Community association manager must navigate potential conflicts of interest and ensure that decisions are made transparently and in accordance with governing documents and applicable state law, which for the CMCA exam is typically based on general principles of common law and statutory frameworks common in U.S. states. The manager's role is to facilitate informed decision-making by the board, not to impose personal opinions or cater to the loudest voices. The correct approach involves diligently researching and presenting all relevant information to the board, including legal counsel's advice and potential financial implications, allowing the board to make an informed decision based on the association's governing documents and applicable law. This upholds the manager's duty of care and loyalty, ensuring that decisions are grounded in established procedures and legal requirements, rather than subjective pressures. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize the opinions of a vocal minority of homeowners over the established legal and procedural requirements. This fails to uphold the manager's fiduciary duty to the association as a whole and can lead to legal challenges and erosion of trust. Another incorrect approach is to unilaterally make a decision without board input or proper legal review. This exceeds the manager's authority and bypasses the governance structure designed to protect the association's interests. Finally, ignoring the issue or delaying action indefinitely is also professionally unacceptable, as it demonstrates a failure to manage the association effectively and can exacerbate problems, potentially leading to greater costs or legal liabilities for the association. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding their role as facilitators and advisors, not decision makers. They must then identify all stakeholders and their legitimate interests. The next step is to gather all pertinent facts, including legal advice and financial data. This information should be presented objectively to the governing body, the board, along with a clear explanation of the relevant governing documents and applicable laws. The manager's responsibility is to ensure the board has the necessary information to make a legally sound and procedurally correct decision, even if that decision is unpopular with some members. Question 2. Which approach would be most appropriate for a community association manager tasked with streamlining the process for approving architectural modification requests, ensuring compliance with governing documents and state law while also enhancing resident experience? Option A. Focus solely on reducing administrative costs by eliminating the need for detailed architectural plans and relying on verbal descriptions from residents. Option B. Immediately implement a new online submission portal and a standardized review checklist based on industry best practices, without consulting the association's governing documents or state statutes. Option C. Conduct a thorough review of the association's Declaration of Covenants, Conditions and Restrictions, CC&RS, bylaws, and relevant state statutes to identify any procedural requirements or limitations regarding architectural review. Then propose a revised process to the board for approval. Option D. Prioritize the fastest possible turnaround time for requests by delegating the final approval authority to a single, experienced board member to expedite decisions. The correct answer is B. Immediately implement a new online submission portal and a standardized review checklist based on industry best practices, without consulting the association's governing documents or state statutes. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for community association managers, balancing the need for efficient operations with the legal and ethical obligations to residents. The manager must interpret and apply governing documents and relevant state statutes to a situation that could impact the community's finances and resident satisfaction. The challenge lies in ensuring that any process optimization adheres strictly to established legal frameworks and the association's own rules, avoiding arbitrary decisions or actions that could lead to legal disputes or resident grievances. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the association's governing documents and applicable state statutes to identify any provisions that govern the proposed process change. This ensures that the optimization is not only efficient, but also legally compliant and ethically sound, respecting the rights and responsibilities of all stakeholders. This aligns with the CMCA emphasis on understanding and applying legal and ethical standards in community association management, an approach that bypasses the review of governing documents and state statutes is procedurally flawed. It risks implementing changes that are not authorized, potentially violating the association's own rules or state law, leading to legal challenges and financial penalties. An approach that prioritizes speed and cost savings without considering the legal implications is also problematic. While efficiency is desirable, it cannot come at the expense of compliance. This could result in decisions that are later overturned, requiring costly remediation and damaging the association's reputation. An approach that relies solely on the opinion of a single board member, without proper due diligence or adherence to established procedures, undermines the collective decision-making process and the manager's professional responsibility to ensure all actions are properly vetted and documented. Professionals should approach process optimization by first understanding the existing legal and regulatory landscape. This involves consulting governing documents, state statutes, and potentially seeking legal counsel when necessary. A structured process involving board approval and clear communication with residents is crucial for successful and compliant implementation. Question 3. Implementation of a new community-wide Wi-Fi service, proposed by a vocal group of residents to enhance connectivity and property values, is being considered by the association's board. The board believes this would be a valuable amenity, but the association's governing documents do not explicitly mention the power to provide internet services. What is the most appropriate course of action for the board to determine if they can proceed? Option A. The board should reject the proposal immediately, as the governing documents do not specifically grant the power to provide internet services, and any action not explicitly authorized is prohibited. Option B. The board should consult the association's governing documents, declaration, bylaws, rules and regulations, and applicable state statutes to ascertain if the association possesses the express or implied power to provide such a service before taking any action. Option C. The board should inform the residents that this is outside the association's purview and suggest they form a separate entity to manage the Wi-Fi service. Option D. The board should proceed with implementing the Wi-Fi service, as it aligns with the general purpose of enhancing community living and improving property values, and a majority of residents at a recent informal gathering expressed support. Correct answer is D. The board should proceed with implementing the Wi-Fi service, as it aligns with the general purpose of enhancing community living and improving property values, and a majority of residents at a recent informal gathering expressed support. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for community association managers, balancing the association's stated purpose and powers with the practical needs and desires of its members, while strictly adhering to governing documents and relevant state statutes. The professional challenge lies in interpreting the scope of the association's authority and ensuring that any action taken is within those defined boundaries, avoiding overreach or inaction that could lead to legal disputes or member dissatisfaction. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between legitimate exercises of power and actions that exceed the association's mandate. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the association's governing documents, declaration, bylaws, rules and regulations, and applicable state statutes to determine if the proposed action falls within the association's enumerated powers. This approach prioritizes legal compliance and adherence to the established framework that governs the community. Specifically, if the association's purpose and powers, as defined in its governing documents and state law. Permit the board to implement a new amenity or service, then proceeding with due diligence, including proper notice and member input where required, is the appropriate course of action. This ensures that the association acts within its legal authority and upholds its fiduciary duties to the membership. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with implementing the new amenity based solely on a perceived need or a majority vote of a quorum at a meeting, without first verifying that the association's governing documents and state law grant it the specific power to undertake such an initiative. This could lead to the association acting ultra vires, beyond its powers, potentially rendering the action invalid and exposing the association and its board members to liability. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the proposal entirely due to a lack of explicit authorization, even if the proposed action aligns with the general spirit and purpose of the association, such as enhancing community living. This could be a failure to exercise reasonable judgment in promoting the well-being of the community, which is often an implied power or purpose. Finally, implementing the amenity without following proper procedures for notice, discussion, and potential member approval, as outlined in the governing documents and state law, would also be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic evaluation. First, understanding the proposed action. Second, meticulously reviewing the association's governing documents and relevant state statutes to identify the scope of the association's purpose and powers. Third, consulting with legal counsel if there is any ambiguity. And fourth, proceeding with the action only if it is clearly within the association's authority and is conducted in accordance with all procedural requirements. Question 4. Stakeholder feedback indicates that a significant number of homeowners are expressing concern about the timeliness and clarity of notices for upcoming board meetings, where important decisions regarding a special assessment are to be made. The association's governing documents specify a 10-day notice period for all board meetings, and state law requires that the notice include the meeting agenda. The manager is aware that the current notice sent out only provided a general topic of financial matters and was sent 8 days prior to the meeting. What is the most appropriate course of action for the community association manager in this situation? Option A. Send out an email to all homeowners immediately after the meeting to clarify the details of the special assessment, assuming this will rectify any notice deficiencies. Option B. Proceed with the meeting and vote as scheduled, as the notice technically informed members of a meeting. Option C. Reschedule the meeting and issue a new notice that clearly states the agenda item regarding the special assessment and provides the full 10-day notice period. Option D. Inform the board that the notice is insufficient and suggest they proceed with the vote, but only after verbally informing attendees at the meeting about the specific agenda item. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the meeting and vote as scheduled, as the notice technically informed members of a meeting. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the desire for efficient decision-making with the fundamental rights of association members to participate and be informed. A community association manager must navigate the specific requirements of governing documents and state law regarding meeting notices and voting procedures to ensure legitimacy and prevent challenges to the association's actions. Failure to adhere to these procedures can lead to legal disputes, invalidation of votes, and erosion of member trust. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the notice requirements outlined in the association's governing documents and applicable state law. This ensures that all members have adequate time and information to prepare for the meeting, understand the issues at hand, and exercise their voting rights. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant, upholding the principles of transparency and democratic participation central to community association governance. An incorrect approach that proceeds with a vote without proper notice fails to uphold the member's right to be informed and participate, violating procedural fairness. This can lead to legal challenges based on procedural irregularities. Another incorrect approach that relies on informal communication or assumes members are aware of the meeting agenda bypasses established protocols, undermining the integrity of the voting process and potentially disenfranchising members. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed over compliance risks invalidating the vote and creating significant legal and financial liabilities for the association. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding and applying the specific requirements of the association's governing documents and relevant state statutes. This involves proactive review of notice periods, content requirements, and delivery methods for all official meetings. When in doubt, consulting legal counsel specializing in community association law is a critical step to ensure compliance and protect the association. Question 5. During the evaluation of the community association's annual insurance renewal, the manager discovers that the current general liability policy limits may be insufficient given recent increases in litigation costs and the potential for significant property damage claims due to aging infrastructure. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure the association is adequately protected and compliant with its obligations? Option A. Select the insurance policy with the lowest premium offered by a reputable carrier, assuming that all standard policies provide sufficient coverage for most community associations. Option B. Advise the board to accept the insurance broker's recommendation without further inquiry, as the broker is the expert in insurance matters. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive review of the association's governing documents, perform a detailed risk assessment of the community's specific exposures, and consult with an insurance professional specializing in community associations to determine appropriate coverage limits and types. Option D. Immediately renew the existing policy at the same limits to avoid any disruption in coverage, as the broker has indicated it is a standard renewal. The correct answer is D. Immediately renew the existing policy at the same limits to avoid any disruption in coverage, as the broker has indicated it is a standard renewal. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a community association manager to balance the fiduciary duty to protect the association's assets with the practical need to secure adequate insurance coverage. Misjudging the scope or adequacy of insurance can expose the association to significant financial risk, potentially leading to special assessment or even bankruptcy if a major claim arises. The manager must navigate complex insurance policies and understand the specific risks inherent to the community. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the association's governing documents, a comprehensive risk assessment of the community's unique exposure, and consultation with a qualified insurance professional specializing in community associations. This ensures that the insurance program aligns with the association's legal obligations and adequately protects against potential liabilities. Adherence to state statutes governing community associations, such as those requiring specific types of insurance coverage and limits, is paramount. This proactive and informed strategy minimizes the risk of underinsurance and ensures compliance with legal mandates. An incorrect approach of simply renewing the existing policy without a comprehensive review fails to account for changes in the community, evolving legal requirements, or shifts in the insurance market. This could lead to coverage gaps or inadequate limits, violating the manager's duty of care and potentially breaching statutory requirements for insurance. Another incorrect approach of selecting the lowest premium option without scrutinizing coverage details is a direct abdication of the manager's responsibility. Insurance is not merely a cost center, it is a critical risk management tool. Prioritizing cost over adequate protection exposes the association to unacceptable financial peril and is a failure to act in the best interests of the members. Finally, relying solely on the insurance broker's recommendations without independent verification or understanding the association's specific needs is also professionally unsound. While brokers provide expertise, the ultimate responsibility for ensuring adequate coverage rests with the association's management and board. A manager must be an informed participant in the insurance procurement process. Professionals should approach insurance evaluation by first understanding the association's governing documents and state laws regarding required coverage. This is followed by a detailed risk assessment to identify potential liabilities. Engaging with an insurance professional specializing in community associations is crucial, but the manager must also actively participate in understanding the proposed coverage, limits, and exclusions to ensure it meets the association's unique needs and legal obligations. Question 6. Strategic planning requires a community association to maintain accurate and accessible information regarding its registered agent and office. Which of the following actions best ensures ongoing compliance and operational integrity for the association? Option A. relying on the assumption that the registered agent information filed with the state remains current unless a specific legal notice is received. Option B, informing the registered agent of any changes in board members but not necessarily the management company, as the management company handles daily operations. Option C, verifying the registered agent's information directly with the state's corporate filing agency and ensuring the agent's office is a physical, accessible location. Option D, periodically reviewing the association's governing documents to ensure the registered agent's address aligns with the physical location of the management company's office. The correct answer is D, periodically reviewing the association's governing documents to ensure the registered agent's address aligns with the physical location of the management company's office. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because the failure to maintain an accurate and accessible registered agent in office can have significant legal and operational consequences for a community association. A registered agent is the official point of contact for legal and official correspondence, and their office is where these documents are received. If this information is outdated or inaccessible, the association could miss critical legal notices, service of process, or other official communications, potentially leading to default judgments, fines, or other penalties. Ensuring compliance with these requirements is a fundamental aspect of corporate governance and operational integrity. The correct approach involves proactively verifying and updating the registered agent and office information with the relevant state authority, and ensuring the designated agent's office is consistently operational and accessible. This demonstrates a commitment to good corporate governance and adherence to statutory requirements. For a community association, this means understanding that the governing documents and state law mandate the maintenance of this information, regularly confirming the accuracy of the registered agent's name and the physical address of their office with the Secretary of State or equivalent state agency is a best practice. Furthermore, it's crucial to ensure the registered agent has a reliable system for receiving and forwarding official documents promptly to the association's management or board. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of missed legal notices and ensures the association remains in good standing with the state. An incorrect approach would be to assume the registered agent information is always current without verification. This failure to actively manage this critical corporate detail can lead to missed legal notices, potentially resulting in default judgments against the association. Another incorrect approach is to rely on a post office box as a registered office. State laws typically require a physical street address where an agent can be found during business hours to accept service of process. A P.O. box does not meet this requirement and would render the association non-compliant. Lastly, neglecting to inform the registered agent of changes in the association's contact personnel or board leadership can also be problematic. The registered agent needs to know who to forward official communications to, and a lack of updated internal contact information can delay or prevent the proper dissemination of important legal and administrative documents. The professional decision-making process for managing a registered agent in office should involve establishing a recurring calendar reminder, e.g., annually, to review and confirm the registered agent's information with the state. This process should include confirming the agent's name, the physical address of their office, and ensuring the agent is aware of their responsibilities and has current contact information for the association's leadership or management company. If any changes occur within the association that might affect official communications, such as a change in management company or board president, this information should be promptly communicated to the registered agent. Question 7. Performance analysis shows that the current CC and RS for the community association are outdated and hinder efficient property management and homeowner enjoyment. As the certified manager of community associations, CMCA, you have identified several potential areas for improvement. Which of the following approaches best optimizes the process of updating the CC and RS while adhering to regulatory requirements and ethical standards? Option A. Consult the existing CC and RS for the specific amendment procedures. Engage legal counsel to ensure compliance with state statutes and association bylaws, and then facilitate the formal amendment process as prescribed. Option B. Draft proposed amendments based on industry best practices and present them to the board for immediate approval and implementation. Option C. Proceed with drafting new language for the CC and RS that reflects current needs and present it to the membership for a simple majority vote, without first verifying the specific amendment requirements in the existing documents. Option D. Implement changes to the CC and RS through informal board discussions and a general consensus among a few key board members, assuming the changes are beneficial for modernization. The correct answer is B. Draft proposed amendments based on industry best practices and present them to the board for immediate approval and implementation. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a community association manager to balance the need for efficient process optimization with the strict legal requirements and ethical obligations surrounding the amendment of governing documents. The Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, CC and RS, is a legally binding document that governs the community, and any changes must adhere to specific procedures to ensure validity and protect the rights of all homeowners. A manager's role is to facilitate these processes while upholding the law and the association's governing documents, not to unilaterally alter them or bypass established protocols. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the existing CC and RS to identify the precise amendment procedures, consultation with legal counsel to ensure compliance with all applicable state statutes and association bylaws, and the facilitation of the prescribed amendment process, which typically includes homeowner notification, board approval, and potentially a membership vote. This approach is correct because it prioritizes legal compliance and due process, safeguarding the integrity of the governing documents and the rights of the association members. Adhering to the established amendment procedures ensures that changes are legally sound and enforceable, preventing future disputes and litigation. An incorrect approach that bypasses the established amendment procedures by simply drafting new language and presenting it for board approval without following the CC and RS specific amendment process is ethically and legally flawed. This failure to follow the prescribed amendment process violates the governing documents and potentially state law, rendering any attempted amendment invalid. Another incorrect approach, which involves implementing changes based on a perceived need for modernization without any formal amendment process, is a direct violation of the legal framework governing community associations. This bypasses the fundamental requirement for homeowner consent and due process, undermining the authority of the CC and RS and the association's governance structure. A third incorrect approach, which relies on informal discussions and a general consensus among a few board members to alter the CC and RS, fails to meet the legal requirements for formal amendment, notification, and voting, thereby creating an unenforceable and potentially litigious situation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the governing documents and applicable state laws. When considering changes to the CC and RS, the first step is always to consult the amendment provisions within the CC and RS themselves. If ambiguity exists, or if the process is complex, seeking guidance from legal counsel specializing in community association law is paramount. All proposed changes must then be processed through the formal amendment procedures outlined in the CC and RS and state statutes, ensuring transparency, proper notice to all members, and adherence to any required voting thresholds. Question 8. The efficiency study reveals that a significant portion of the association's budget is allocated to landscaping services. A homeowner, who is an active participant in board meetings, submits a formal written request to inspect the detailed invoices and contracts related to all landscaping services provided over the past 2 fiscal years. The community association manager is concerned that this homeowner might be using this information to challenge the board's vendor selection process and potentially disrupt upcoming board elections. What is the most appropriate course of action for the community association manager? Option A. Advise the homeowner that they must provide a detailed explanation of why they require these specific documents and what their intended use is before the request can be considered. Option B. Provide the homeowner with copies of all requested invoices and contracts, redacting only information explicitly protected by statute or the governing documents, such as personal contact details of non-management employees. Option C. Offer to provide a summary report of landscaping expenses instead of the actual invoices and contracts, explaining that this will give the homeowner a clear overview of the spending. Option D. Inform the homeowner that the requested documents are for internal management purposes only and are not available for member inspection, due to concerns about potential misuse of information. The correct answer is B. Provide the homeowner with copies of all requested invoices and contracts, redacting only information explicitly protected by statute or the governing documents, such as personal contact details of non-management employees. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the association's operational needs with the fundamental rights of its members, specifically their right to access information and participate in governance. A community association manager must navigate these competing interests while adhering strictly to the governing documents and relevant state statutes. The manager's role is to facilitate informed decision-making by the board and members, not to unilaterally restrict access to information that could impact member participation. The correct approach involves providing the requested documents to the member, subject to any legally permissible redactions for privacy or proprietary information as outlined in the governing documents or state law. This upholds the member's right to inspect association records, a cornerstone of transparency and accountability in community associations. This right is typically codified in state statutes governing HOAs and condominiums, ensuring members can stay informed about the association's financial health, operational decisions, and governance. Failing to provide access without proper legal justification undermines member trust and can lead to legal challenges. An incorrect approach would be to deny the request outright, citing vague concerns about the member's intentions or the potential for misuse of information. This fails to recognize the member's statutory and common law right to access records. Another incorrect approach is to provide only a summary or selective information without the full documents. This obstructs the member's ability to conduct a thorough review and understand the context of the information, thereby hindering informed participation. Finally, demanding a specific reason for the request beyond the member's status as an owner is often an overreach, as the right to inspect records is generally not contingent on demonstrating a specific need or purpose. Professionals should approach such requests by first consulting the association's governing documents and applicable state statutes to understand the scope of the member's inspection rights and any limitations. If there are concerns about privacy or proprietary information, the manager should identify specific provisions in the law or governing documents that permit redaction. The default should always be transparency, with any restrictions being narrowly tailored and legally defensible. Open communication with the member, explaining the process and any permissible limitations, is also crucial. Question 9. The performance metrics show a significant increase in violations of the community's exterior painting color guidelines over the past quarter, with several homeowners proceeding with unapproved color changes without seeking prior Architectural Review Board (ARB) approval. As the certified manager of community associations, CMCA, what is the most appropriate initial course of action to address this trend while adhering to the association's governing documents and applicable state law? Option A. Contact the homeowners directly via phone to discuss the unapproved color changes and request that they revert the colors to the approved palette. Option B. Initiate a formal notice of violation to each homeowner identified as having made an unapproved color change, clearly stating the specific rule violated and providing a time frame to cure the violation or request a hearing. Option C. Send a general reminder to all residents via the community newsletter about the importance of adhering to the exterior painting color guidelines and the process for obtaining ARB approval for any exterior modifications. Option D. Immediately issue fines to all homeowners who have made unapproved color changes, citing the violation of the exterior painting color guidelines. The correct answer is D. Immediately issue fines to all homeowners who have made unapproved color changes, citing the violation of the exterior painting color guidelines. Explanation: the performance metrics show a consistent pattern of rule violations related to exterior home modifications within the community. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the community manager to balance the association's need to maintain property values and aesthetic standards with the rights of individual homeowners. The manager must navigate the enforcement process fairly, consistently, and in accordance with governing documents and applicable state law, which often involves a multi-step process before penalties can be imposed. Careful judgment is required to ensure that enforcement actions are not arbitrary or discriminatory. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the established procedures for rule enforcement outlined in the association's governing documents and state statutes. This typically includes providing written notice of the violation, offering the homeowner an opportunity to cure the violation or present their case, and then, if necessary, imposing penalties in a graduated manner as specified in the rules. This methodical process ensures due process for the homeowner and protects the association from potential legal challenges. It aligns with the ethical obligation of a community manager to act in the best interests of the association while respecting individual property rights and following established legal and contractual frameworks. An incorrect approach that immediately imposes fines without prior notice or an opportunity for the homeowner to address the violation fails to provide due process. This can lead to legal disputes and damage the relationship between the association and its members. Another incorrect approach, which involves selectively enforcing rules against certain homeowners while ignoring similar violations by others, constitutes discriminatory enforcement. This is unethical and can result in legal liability for the association and the manager, as it violates the principle of equal treatment for all members. Finally, an approach that bypasses the established dispute resolution mechanisms outlined in the governing documents, such as failing to issue warning letters or hold hearings when required, undermines the integrity of the association's governance and can lead to procedural irregularities that invalidate enforcement actions. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to governing documents and state law. This involves thoroughly understanding the association's rules and regulations, as well as the relevant legal requirements for enforcement. When faced with a violation, the manager should consult the governing documents to determine the prescribed enforcement steps. If there is ambiguity, seeking legal counsel is advisable. The process should always begin with clear communication and documentation, ensuring that homeowners are informed of violations and have a fair opportunity to respond before any penalties are levied. Consistency and fairness in applying rules are paramount to maintaining a well-functioning community and mitigating legal risks. Question 10. Cost-benefit analysis shows that amending the governing documents to allow for new type of rental restriction could significantly increase property values and attract a more stable tenant base, thereby benefiting all owners. However, the proposed amendment's language is vague and may conflict with existing state statutes regarding leasehold interests. As the certified manager of community associations, CMCA, what is the most appropriate initial step to take? Option A. Advise the board of directors that the amendment is likely beneficial and recommend they proceed with the vote, as the perceived financial benefits outweigh potential minor legal ambiguities. Option B. Inform the owners that the board is considering an amendment that could increase property values and defer to their collective decision on whether to pursue it, regardless of legal feasibility. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive review of the association's governing documents and relevant state statutes to determine the legality and procedural requirements for such an amendment before advising the board. Option D. Immediately draft the amendment language to reflect the desired rental restrictions and present it to the board for approval, assuming the board's intent is sufficient legal justification. The correct answer is A. Advise the board of directors that the amendment is likely beneficial and recommend they proceed with the vote, as the perceived financial benefits outweigh potential minor legal ambiguities. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the financial interests of the association with the legal rights and responsibilities of its members and the association itself. A community association manager must navigate potential conflicts of interest and ensure that all actions taken are in compliance with governing documents and relevant state statutes. The manager's duty is to act in the best interest of the association as a whole, which often involves difficult decisions that may not please every individual owner. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the governing documents and applicable state law to determine the association's authority and obligations regarding the proposed amendment. This approach is correct because it prioritizes legal compliance and adherence to the established framework for decision-making within the community. Specifically, state statutes governing community associations often dictate the process for amending governing documents, including notice requirements, voting thresholds, and the types of provisions that can be amended. Acting without this due diligence risks legal challenges, invalidation of the amendment, and potential liability for the association and its management. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the amendment based solely on the perceived financial benefit without verifying the legal process. This fails to uphold the manager's fiduciary duty to the association and its members by potentially bypassing required legal procedures. Another incorrect approach would be to defer the decision entirely to the board, without providing them with the necessary legal context and analysis of the governing documents. While the board has ultimate decision-making authority, the manager's role includes providing informed recommendations based on legal and regulatory frameworks. This failure to provide informed guidance can lead the board to make decisions that are not legally sound. Professionals should approach such situations by first identifying the core issue and the stakeholders involved. Then, they must consult the governing documents and relevant state statutes to understand the legal parameters. This is followed by an objective assessment of the proposed action's compliance with these legal requirements. Finally, the manager should present a clear, legally informed recommendation to the board, outlining the potential benefits, risks, and legal implications of each course of action. Question 11. The risk matrix shows a potential legal challenge arising from a dispute over the interpretation of architectural guidelines. A homeowner has submitted plans that deviate from the established guidelines, and the Architectural Review Committee has denied the request. The homeowner is threatening to sue, claiming the committee's decision is arbitrary and capricious. Which of the following approaches best reflects the application of case law and precedents in managing this situation? Option A suggests that the association ignore the homeowner's threat and proceed with enforcing the guidelines strictly as written, without considering any external legal interpretations. Option B, advise the board to review past decisions made by the Architectural Review Committee on similar deviations to ensure consistency and research relevant court rulings on arbitrary and capricious enforcement of architectural guidelines in similar community associations. Option C, advise the board to hire an attorney to file a preemptive lawsuit against the homeowner to establish the association's authority. Option D, recommend that the board immediately approve the homeowner's plans to avoid any potential litigation, regardless of the guidelines. The correct answer is B. Advise the board to review past decisions made by the Architectural Review Committee on similar deviations to ensure consistency and research relevant court rulings on arbitrary and capricious enforcement of architectural guidelines in similar community associations. Explanation. The risk matrix shows a potential legal challenge arising from a dispute over the interpretation of architectural guidelines. This scenario is professionally challenging because community association managers must balance the association's right to enforce its governing documents with the potential for individual owner dissatisfaction and legal action. Navigating these disputes requires a deep understanding of relevant case law and precedents that have shaped the interpretation and enforcement of such rules. A manager's judgment is critical in determining when to mediate, when to seek legal counsel, and how to apply established legal principles to unique factual situations. The correct approach involves researching and applying relevant case law and precedents that have established principles for interpreting and enforcing architectural guidelines. This demonstrates a commitment to acting within the established legal framework, ensuring fair and consistent application of rules, and mitigating the association's legal exposure. By understanding how courts have ruled in similar situations, the manager can advise the board on the strength of the association's position and the potential outcomes of different enforcement strategies, thereby protecting the association's interests and adhering to its fiduciary duties. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on the board's immediate opinion or a recent, but potentially unrepresentative, decision within the association. This fails to acknowledge the body of established case law that provides a more robust and predictable legal standard. It risks inconsistent enforcement and exposes the association to legal challenges based on arbitrary or uninformed decisions, potentially leading to unfavorable judgments that could set a detrimental precedent for future cases. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the dispute and hope it resolves itself. This passive stance neglects the manager's and the board's fiduciary duty to address and resolve issues that could impact the association. It allows potential problems to fester, increasing the likelihood of escalation, greater animosity between parties, and a more complex and costly resolution down the line, potentially involving litigation where the association's inaction could be viewed negatively by a court. Finally, an incorrect approach is to immediately resort to aggressive legal action without first exploring less adversarial resolutions or thoroughly understanding the legal landscape. While legal action may ultimately be necessary, a premature or overly aggressive stance, without the foundation of relevant case law and precedent, can escalate conflict, incur unnecessary legal fees, and may not achieve the desired outcome if not strategically grounded in established legal principles. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Identifying the core issue and its potential legal implications. 2. Conducting thorough research into relevant statutes, governing documents, and, crucially, case law and precedents. 3. Consulting with legal counsel to interpret findings and assess risks. 4. Developing a strategy that balances enforcement with fairness and legal defensibility. And 5. Documenting all actions and decisions meticulously. Question 12. Operational review demonstrates that a significant landscaping repair project is necessary for the common areas. The community association manager has a long-standing, positive working relationship with a local landscaping company that has historically provided excellent service at reasonable rates. The manager believes this company can complete the project efficiently and effectively. What is the manager's primary responsibility in this situation, considering the association's governing documents and applicable state statutes? Option A. Post a notice on the community bulletin board inviting any resident who wishes to submit a bid for the landscaping project. Option B. Directly contract with the preferred landscaping company to expedite the repairs, given their proven track record and the manager's confidence in their ability to deliver quality work at a fair price. Option C. Inform the preferred landscaping company of the project and ask them to provide a quote. Then proceed with the contract if the quote is within the allocated budget without further board involvement. Option D. Solicit bids from at least 3 qualified landscaping companies, including the preferred vendor, and present the bids and a recommendation to the board of directors for their formal approval of the contract. The correct answer is B. Directly contract with the preferred landscaping company to expedite the repairs, given their proven track record and the manager's confidence in their ability to deliver quality work at a fair price. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the community association manager must balance the need for efficient property maintenance with the fiduciary duty owed to the association's members. The manager's role involves acting in the best interests of the association, which includes ensuring that services are procured appropriately and that funds are managed responsibly. This requires a thorough understanding of the governing documents and applicable state laws regarding bidding and contract approvals. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the association's governing documents and state statutes concerning procurement and contract approval. This typically means obtaining multiple bids for significant projects, even if a preferred vendor is known, and ensuring that the board of directors formally approves contracts exceeding a certain threshold or as otherwise stipulated in the governing documents. This process safeguards the association's assets, promotes transparency, and upholds the manager's ethical obligation to act with due care and loyalty. An incorrect approach would be to bypass the bidding process entirely and directly award the contract to the preferred vendor, even if the vendor is reputable and offers a competitive price. This failure to follow established procurement procedures violates the association's governing documents and potentially state laws, which are designed to prevent favoritism and ensure the best value for the association. It also erodes trust among members and can lead to accusations of impropriety. Another incorrect approach is to approve the contract without formal board ratification, even if bids were solicited. While the manager may have the authority to solicit bids and make recommendations, the ultimate approval of significant contracts typically rests with the board of directors, as per the governing documents and state law. Delegating this authority without proper authorization or failing to secure the required board approval undermines the governance structure of the association and exposes the manager to liability. A third incorrect approach is to delay the decision-making process unnecessarily, even after bids have been received and reviewed. While due diligence is important, prolonged delays can lead to increased costs, missed opportunities for essential repairs, and dissatisfaction among residents. The manager has a responsibility to facilitate timely and informed decision-making by the board. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of the association's governing documents, e.g., CC and RS, bylaws, rules and regulations, and applicable state statutes. The manager should identify the specific requirements for procurement, bidding, and contract approval. If there is any ambiguity, seeking clarification from legal counsel is advisable. The manager should then present all relevant information, including bids and recommendations, to the board of directors in a clear and concise manner, allowing them to make an informed decision in accordance with their fiduciary duties. Question 13. Investigation of a recurring issue with a common area amenity, where residents have expressed significant dissatisfaction with its current condition and functionality, requires the community association manager to initiate a process for resolution. The manager has gathered initial resident feedback and has identified potential repair and upgrade options. What is the most appropriate next step for the manager to take in developing and implementing a solution? Option A. Immediately proceed with the most cost-effective repair option based on the initial feedback to address resident concerns promptly. Option B. Inform residents that the issue is being reviewed and advise them to wait for further updates without providing a timeline or specific actions. Option C. Solicit bids from contractors for all possible upgrade options and present the lowest bid to the board for approval. Option D. Present the gathered feedback and potential solutions to the board of directors for discussion and decision-making. Correct answer is D. Present the gathered feedback and potential solutions to the board of directors for discussion and decision-making. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a community association manager to balance the immediate needs of residents with the long-term financial health and legal obligations of the association. The manager must navigate competing interests and potential conflicts while adhering to established procedures and governing documents. Careful judgment is required to ensure decisions are fair, transparent, and legally sound. The correct approach involves a structured decision-making framework that prioritizes due process, transparency, and adherence to governing documents. This approach begins with a thorough investigation of the issue, gathering all relevant facts, and consulting applicable documents. It then involves presenting the findings and potential solutions to the board of directors, who are ultimately responsible for decision-making. This ensures that decisions are made by the elected representatives of the community, with the manager acting in an advisory and implementation capacity. This aligns with CMCA principles of ethical conduct, which emphasize acting in the best interest of the association and its members, and following established procedures. An incorrect approach would be to unilaterally implement a solution without board approval. This bypasses the governance structure of the association, undermines the authority of the board, and could lead to decisions that are not in the best interest of the community or are not legally compliant. It also fails to provide transparency to the membership. Another incorrect approach would be to delay action indefinitely due to a lack of clear direction. While caution is important, a manager has a professional responsibility to identify issues and bring them to the attention of the board with proposed solutions. Indefinite delay can exacerbate problems and lead to greater costs or resident dissatisfaction. Third incorrect approach would be to make a decision based solely on personal opinion or the loudest voices within the community. This lacks objectivity, ignores the formal decision-making process, and can lead to biased outcomes that do not serve the overall interests of the association. It also fails to uphold the manager's duty to act impartially. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that includes 1. Identifying the problem and gathering information. 2. Consulting governing documents and relevant laws. 3. Developing potential solutions. 4. Presenting findings and recommendations to the board. 5. Implementing the board's approved decision. 6. Communicating the decision and its rationale to the community. Question 14. Governance review demonstrates that a significant number of homeowners are requesting a change to a long-standing rule regarding exterior paint colors, which is currently detailed in the association's CC and RS. The homeowners believe the current restrictions are too limiting and wish to adopt a broader palette. The manager has confirmed that the current CC and RS do not grant the Architectural Review Committee (ARC) the authority to unilaterally approve such changes, and any amendment to the CC and RS requires a supermajority vote of the membership. What is the manager's primary responsibility in this situation? Option A. Draft a new rule that overrides the CC and RS regarding paint colors, based on the expressed wishes of the majority of homeowners. Option B. Advise the homeowners on the process for proposing an amendment to the CC and RS to change the paint color restrictions, including the required voting thresholds and procedures. Option C. Recommend that the Architectural Review Committee (ARC) interpret the existing rule broadly to accommodate the homeowners' preferences. Option D. Inform the homeowners that the rule cannot be changed as it is clearly stated in the CC and RS and no further action is possible. The correct answer is B. Advise the homeowners on the process for proposing an amendment to the CC and RS to change the paint color restrictions, including the required voting thresholds and procedures. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the community association manager to navigate potential conflicts between the express language of governing documents and the practical needs or desires of a significant portion of the membership. Misinterpreting or misapplying the governing documents can lead to legal disputes, financial penalties, and erosion of trust between the manager, the board, and the homeowners. The manager must act as a neutral interpreter and enforcer of the rules, even when those rules are unpopular or seem outdated. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the association's declaration of covenants, conditions and restrictions, CC and RS, bylaws and rules and regulations to determine the precise authority and process for amending them. This approach is correct because it adheres strictly to the established legal framework for community associations. The governing documents themselves dictate how they can be changed, and any action taken must align with these provisions. This ensures that amendments are legally valid and enforceable, protecting the association from challenges. The manager's role is to facilitate the process as outlined, not to circumvent it. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that bypasses the formal amendment process by simply implementing the desired change based on a majority vote at a membership meeting, without following the amendment procedures outlined in the governing documents, is incorrect. This fails to comply with the legal requirements for amending the CC and RS or bylaws, which typically require a supermajority vote and specific filing procedures. Such an action would render the change unenforceable and expose the association to legal liability. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the membership's request entirely, citing the current document language, without exploring the possibility of a formal amendment. While adhering to current documents is crucial, a manager also has a responsibility to facilitate the governance process. If a significant portion of the membership wishes to change a rule, the manager should guide them through the proper channels for proposing and voting on an amendment, rather than simply shutting down the discussion. This can lead to dissatisfaction and a perception of managerial inflexibility. Finally, an approach that involves the manager unilaterally deciding to interpret the existing rule in a way that accommodates the majority's wishes, without a formal amendment or clear legal basis for such an interpretation, is also incorrect. This constitutes an unauthorized alteration of the governing documents and undermines the authority of the board and the established legal framework. Such an interpretation could be challenged and overturned, creating further complications. Professional reasoning. Community association managers must prioritize adherence to the governing documents as the primary legal authority. When faced with requests that conflict with these documents, the professional decision-making process involves 1. Identifying the specific governing document provisions at issue. 2. Consulting the amendment procedures within those documents. 3. Advising the board and membership on the correct process for proposing and enacting changes. 4. Facilitating the amendment process if the board and membership decide to proceed. 5. Ensuring all actions are legally compliant and properly documented. Question 15. The control framework reveals that a community association is considering a significant expansion of its recreational facilities, an initiative not explicitly detailed in its original articles of incorporation. The board of directors, supported by a majority of the membership, believes this expansion is vital for enhancing property values and resident satisfaction. What is the most appropriate course of action for the community manager to ensure this initiative proceeds legally and ethically? Option A. Focus solely on the bylaws and rules and regulations to authorize the expansion, as these documents provide the operational guidelines for the association. Option B. Advise the board to proceed with the expansion, as the majority of the membership supports it, and it is deemed beneficial for the association's future. Option C. Proceed with the expansion based on the historical practice of the association, making significant improvements without formal amendment processes. Option D. Recommend that the board consult the Articles of Incorporation to determine if such an expansion is within the association's stated purpose and powers, and if not, to initiate the formal amendment process for the articles. The correct answer is B. Advise the board to proceed with the expansion, as the majority of the membership supports it and it is deemed beneficial for the association's future. Explanation. The control framework reveals that managing a community association requires a thorough understanding of its foundational governing documents, particularly the Articles of Incorporation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves a potential conflict between the practical needs of the association and the legal limitations imposed by its founding charter. A community manager must navigate this tension while upholding their fiduciary duty to the association and its members, ensuring all actions are legally sound and in accordance with the established rules. The correct approach involves a meticulous review of the Articles of Incorporation to determine if the proposed amendment or action is permissible within the existing framework, or if a formal amendment process is required. This approach is correct because the Articles of Incorporation are the primary legal document establishing the association's existence, purpose, and fundamental powers. Any action taken by the association must align with these articles. If the articles do not explicitly grant the authority for the proposed action, or if they restrict it, the manager must advise the board on the proper legal procedures, which may include amending the articles themselves. This upholds the integrity of the governing documents and ensures compliance with state corporate law governing nonprofit or homeowners associations. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the proposed action based solely on a majority vote of the board or membership if the Articles of Incorporation do not grant such authority. This is a regulatory failure because it bypasses the legal requirements for corporate governance and could render the action invalid. It also violates the fiduciary duty to act within the scope of the association's legal powers. Another incorrect approach is to assume that because a practice has been followed historically, it is permissible, even if it contradicts the Articles of Incorporation. This is an ethical and regulatory failure. Past practice does not supersede the legal requirements of the governing documents. The manager has a responsibility to identify and correct such discrepancies, not perpetuate them. A further incorrect approach is to ignore the Articles of Incorporation entirely and rely solely on the bylaws or other secondary governing documents. While bylaws provide operational rules, they cannot override the fundamental provisions established in the Articles of Incorporation. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the hierarchy of governing documents and a failure to adhere to the primary legal framework. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with identifying the core issue and the governing documents relevant to it. A systematic review of the Articles of Incorporation, followed by the bylaws and any other applicable rules, is essential. If there is ambiguity or a conflict, seeking legal counsel from an attorney specializing in community association law is paramount. The manager's role is to facilitate informed decision-making by the board, grounded in legal compliance and the association's governing documents. Question 16. When evaluating a homeowner's request for a significant exterior modification that requires Architectural Review Committee (ARC) approval, and the manager has concerns about the modification's compliance with community guidelines, but the ARC appears inclined to approve it due to a desire to avoid conflict, what is the most appropriate managerial action? Option A. The manager should defer the decision entirely to the ARC and refrain from offering any input or guidance, assuming the committee will handle it appropriately. Option B. The manager should facilitate a discussion with the ARC, clearly outlining the specific community guidelines that appear to be violated by the proposed modification and explaining the potential consequences of approving a non-compliant project, while emphasizing the ARC responsibility to uphold the established standards. Option C. The manager should inform the homeowner that the modification is not compliant and deny the request directly, bypassing the ARC review process. Option D. The manager should instruct the ARC to approve the modification to maintain good relations with the homeowner, regardless of guideline compliance. The correct answer is B. The manager should facilitate a discussion with the ARC, clearly outlining the specific community guidelines that appear to be violated by the proposed modification, and explaining the potential consequences of approving a non-compliant project, while emphasizing the ARC responsibility to uphold the established standards. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for community association managers, balancing the need for efficient decision-making with the requirement for proper committee oversight and adherence to governing documents. The challenge lies in ensuring that committees, while empowered to act, do not overstep their authority or operate outside the established framework, which could lead to legal disputes or financial mismanagement. Careful judgment is required to determine the appropriate level of managerial involvement and the scope of committee autonomy. The correct approach involves the manager acting as a facilitator and advisor, ensuring the Architectural Review Committee, ARC, understands its defined scope of authority as outlined in the governing documents and state law. The manager's role is to guide the ARC in its decision-making process, provide necessary information, and ensure compliance with established procedures and standards. This approach upholds the integrity of the committee's function, while maintaining the manager's fiduciary responsibility to the association. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing community associations, typically mandate that committees operate within the bounds set by the declaration, bylaws, and applicable statutes, and that managers ensure such compliance. An incorrect approach would be for the manager to unilaterally approve or deny the homeowner's request without the ARC input. This bypasses the established committee structure, undermining its purpose and potentially violating the governing documents that grant the ARC the authority to review architectural changes. It also removes the checks and balances intended by the association's framework. Another incorrect approach would be for the manager to instruct the ARC to approve the request regardless of its merits or adherence to guidelines. This constitutes undue influence and interference, compromising the committee's independent judgment and potentially leading to decisions that are not in the best interest of the community or that violate established architectural standards. This action could also expose the manager and the association to liability if the approved modification later causes issues. A further incorrect approach would be for the manager to ignore the request entirely, assuming it is solely the ARC responsibility and not offering any guidance or oversight. While the ARC has authority, the manager has a duty to ensure all association processes are functioning correctly and that homeowners' requests are handled appropriately and in a timely manner within the established procedures. Inaction can be as detrimental as improper action. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves 1. Identifying the relevant governing documents, CC and RS, bylaws, rules and regulations, and state statutes that define the committee's authority and responsibilities. 2. Understanding the specific nature of the request and whether it falls within the committee's purview. 3. Facilitating communication between the homeowner and the committee, ensuring all necessary information is provided. 4. Advising the committee on procedural requirements and potential implications of their decision without dictating the outcome. 5. Documenting the process and the committee's decision. Question 17. Market research demonstrates that a growing number of community associations are seeking to update their governing documents to reflect current best practices and address evolving community needs. A community association's board of directors has identified several provisions in the declaration that they believe are outdated and hinder efficient management. They have consulted with legal counsel, who has drafted proposed amendments. The board now needs to proceed with formally adopting these amendments. Which of the following represents the correct and legally sound procedure for amending the declaration? Option A. The board of directors votes to approve the amendments at a regular board meeting, and the amendments are immediately effective. Option B. The board of directors publishes the proposed amendments on the community website for a period of 30 days, allowing members to submit written comments, and then adopts the amendments themselves. Option C. The board of directors calls a special meeting of the membership, provides proper written notice of the proposed amendments and the meeting date, and obtains the supermajority vote of the membership as required by the declaration and state law. Option D. The board of directors holds a town hall meeting to discuss the proposed amendments, and if a simple majority of attendees vote in favor, the amendments are considered adopted. The correct answer is A. The board of directors votes to approve the amendments at a regular board meeting, and the amendments are immediately effective. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because amending governing documents requires strict adherence to established procedures to ensure legal validity and community acceptance. A community manager must balance the need for modernization or correction with the rights of the membership and the legal requirements for document changes. Failure to follow the correct amendment procedure can lead to the amendments being invalidated, creating legal disputes and undermining the authority of the board and management. The correct approach involves meticulously following the specific amendment procedures outlined in the association's governing documents, declaration, bylaws, rules, and state statutes. This typically includes proper notice to members, holding a required meeting, achieving the necessary voting threshold, often a supermajority, and filing any required documents with the county recorder. This process ensures transparency, due process for all members, and legal enforceability of the amendments. An incorrect approach that bypasses the required voting threshold, such as the board unilaterally adopting amendments without member approval, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It violates the fundamental principle that significant changes to governing documents require member consent as stipulated by law and the association's own rules. This undermines democratic governance within the association and can lead to legal challenges based on procedural defects. Another incorrect approach, such as failing to provide adequate notice of the proposed amendment and the meeting where it will be voted upon, is also a regulatory and ethical failure. Proper notice is a cornerstone of due process, ensuring all members have the opportunity to review the proposed changes and participate in the decision-making process. Insufficient notice disenfranchises members and renders the amendment process invalid. A third incorrect approach, such as not filing the adopted amendments with the appropriate government agency if required by state law, is a legal failure. This omission can render the amendments unenforceable against third parties or even against members, depending on the specific statutory requirements. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the governing documents and applicable state statutes first. This involves 1. Identifying the specific amendment procedure required for the type of document being amended. 2. Ensuring all notice requirements are met with sufficient lead time. 3. Confirming the correct voting threshold and ensuring it is achieved. 4. Verifying any post-amendment filing requirements. 5. Consulting legal counsel when in doubt about any aspect of the process. Question 18. Analysis of a situation where a community association manager receives a credible report of a significant violation of community rules by a specific homeowner, involving potential damage to common elements. The manager has a duty to report and communicate this information. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the professional responsibilities of a certified manager of community associations, CMCA, in this scenario? Assuming a U.S. jurisdiction. Option A. Immediately post a detailed notice on the community's online portal and bulletin board outlining the alleged violation, the homeowner's name, and the potential consequences, while also informing the board of directors. Option B. Inform the board of directors of the report and await their specific instructions on how to proceed, without any initial communication to the homeowner or the general membership. Option C. Conduct a thorough investigation, document all findings, communicate the details of the alleged violation and investigation status to the board of directors as per established protocols, and then prepare a formal communication to the affected homeowner and a general notification to the membership regarding the process and potential outcomes, without naming the individual. Option D. Verbally inform a few trusted board members about the report and discuss potential actions informally, while also sending a general email to all residents about the importance of following community rules. The correct answer is A. Immediately post a detailed notice on the community's online portal and bulletin board outlining the alleged violation, the homeowner's name, and the potential consequences, while also informing the board of directors. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for community association managers, balancing the need for transparency and timely communication with the protection of individual privacy and the efficient operation of the association. The manager must navigate the association's governing documents, state laws, assuming a U.S. jurisdiction for CMCA, and ethical obligations to all members. The professional challenge lies in discerning what information is appropriate to share broadly, what requires individual notification, and what should remain confidential, all while maintaining trust and fulfilling reporting duties. The correct approach involves a multifaceted communication strategy that prioritizes informing the board and relevant parties promptly, while respecting privacy and adhering to established procedures. This includes documenting the issue, communicating with the board as per the governing documents and established protocols, and then disseminating information to the membership in a manner that is both informative and compliant. This approach upholds the manager's duty of care and loyalty to the association and its members, ensuring that decisions are made with informed consent and that all parties are aware of significant matters affecting the community, as required by typical state condominium or homeowners association acts and ethical standards for community association managers. An incorrect approach would be to immediately broadcast all details of the alleged violation to the entire membership without proper investigation or board notification. This fails to respect the privacy of the individuals involved, potentially violates due process rights if allegations are not yet substantiated, and bypasses the board's oversight role, which is crucial for decision-making and enforcement. Another incorrect approach is to only communicate with the board and not inform the membership at all, even when the issue has broader community implications or requires member action. This lack of transparency erodes trust and can lead to rumors and misinformation, failing the manager's duty to keep the membership reasonably informed about matters affecting their property and community. Finally, relying solely on informal verbal updates without proper documentation or formal communication channels is unprofessional and can lead to misunderstandings, misinformation, and a lack of accountability. Professionals should approach such situations by first consulting the association's governing documents, CC&RS, bylaws, rules and regulations, and applicable state statutes regarding notice, hearings, and communication. They should then document the situation thoroughly, communicate with the board of directors according to established procedures, and develop a communication plan for the membership that is factual, timely, and compliant with legal and ethical standards. This systematic process ensures that all stakeholders are appropriately informed and that the association operates within its legal and ethical framework. Question 19. Compliance review shows that at the annual membership meeting of the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association, only 20% of the total membership was present in person or by proxy when the meeting was called to order. Despite this, the board proceeded to vote on and approve a significant amendment to the association's architectural guidelines. What is the most appropriate course of action for the community association manager in this situation, considering the CMCA exam's focus on regulatory compliance and ethical conduct? Option A. Recommend that the board proceed with the approved amendment, as the presence of a significant portion of the membership, 20%, is generally considered sufficient for most association business. Option B. Inform the board that since a majority of the board members were present, the vote is valid, as board presence often implies a quorum for association-wide decisions. Option C. Suggests that the manager cast a proxy vote on behalf of the absent members to establish quorum and validate the board's decision. Option D. Advise the board that the vote on the architectural guideline amendment is invalid due to lack of quorum and recommend that the matter be revisited at a future meeting where quorum can be achieved. The correct answer is D. Advise the board that the vote on the architectural guideline amendment is invalid due to lack of quorum and recommend that the matter be revisited at a future meeting where quorum can be achieved. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in community association management, ensuring that decisions made at a meeting are legally valid and reflect the will of the membership. The core issue revolves around understanding and applying quorum requirements, which are fundamental to the democratic functioning of an association. A professionally challenging aspect is the potential for a small, unrepresentative group to make decisions that bind the entire community if quorum is not properly established or maintained. This requires a manager to be diligent in understanding the governing documents and applicable state law, and to communicate these requirements clearly to the board and membership. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the quorum requirements as defined in the association's governing documents and state statutes. This means that a meeting can only conduct official business if the specified percentage or number of members, or their proxies, are present. If quorum is not met, any votes taken on substantive matters are invalid. This approach is correct because it upholds the legal integrity of the association's decision-making process and ensures that actions taken are authorized by a sufficient portion of the membership, thereby preventing a minority from controlling the association. This aligns with the ethical duty of a community association manager to act in the best interests of the association and its members, and to ensure compliance with all applicable laws and governing documents. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with voting on important matters, even when it is clear that quorum has not been met. This is a regulatory and ethical failure, because it bypasses the fundamental requirement for valid decision-making. Such an action undermines the democratic principles of the association and could lead to legally challengeable decisions. Another incorrect approach would be to misinterpret or selectively apply the quorum requirements based on convenience or a desire to achieve a particular outcome. This demonstrates a lack of professional integrity and a failure to uphold the manager's duty to act impartially and in accordance with the established rules. A third incorrect approach might be to assume that a quorum is met simply because a meeting is convened, without actively verifying the presence of the required number of members or proxies. This oversight can lead to the invalidation of votes and potential legal disputes, highlighting a failure in due diligence and adherence to procedural requirements. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a thorough review of the association's governing documents, e.g., CC and RS, bylaws, and relevant state statutes to ascertain the precise definition and calculation of quorum. Before any meeting where voting is anticipated, the manager should proactively communicate these requirements to the board, and if applicable, to the membership. During the meeting, the manager must actively monitor attendance and the presence of proxies to determine if quorum has been achieved before allowing any votes on substantive issues. If quorum is not met, the manager should advise the board to adjourn or table the discussion of business items until a future meeting where quorum can be established. Transparency and clear communication with the board and membership regarding quorum status are paramount. Question 20. The monitoring system demonstrates a consistent trend of architectural modification requests being submitted with missing essential documentation, leading to prolonged review periods and potential breaches of community guidelines. Which of the following management strategies best addresses this recurring issue while upholding the principles of community association governance? Option A. Expedite the review process for all incomplete applications, assuming residents will provide the missing information at a later stage to avoid resident dissatisfaction. Option B. Advise the Architectural Review Committee to approve applications based on their best judgment, even if documentation is lacking, to maintain a positive relationship with residents. Option C. Reject all incomplete architectural modification requests outright without providing any feedback or guidance on what specific documentation is missing. Option D. Implement a standardized submission checklist that must be fully completed and signed by the homeowner before any architectural review can commence, with clear communication of this requirement to all residents. The correct answer is D. Implement a standardized submission checklist that must be fully completed and signed by the homeowner before any architectural review can commence, with clear communication of this requirement to all residents. Explanation. The monitoring system demonstrates a recurring pattern of residents submitting architectural modification requests that are incomplete or lack necessary supporting documentation, leading to delays in the review process and potential violations of community association rules. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the association's need to enforce its governing documents with the residents' right to utilize and improve their property, all while maintaining efficient operations and positive community relations. A community manager must navigate these competing interests with fairness, transparency, and adherence to established procedures. The correct approach involves establishing and consistently enforcing a clear, documented process for architectural review that includes specific requirements for submission completeness. This approach is justified by the CMCA emphasis on adherence to governing documents and the principles of good governance. By requiring complete submissions, the manager ensures that the Architectural Review Committee, ARC, or board has all the necessary information to make informed decisions, preventing arbitrary rejections and minimizing delays. This also upholds the integrity of the review process and protects the association from potential legal challenges arising from inconsistent application of rules. Furthermore, clear communication of these requirements to residents, perhaps through a homeowner handbook or website, promotes transparency and resident understanding, An incorrect approach would be to approve incomplete applications based on a resident's personal appeal or perceived urgency. This failure stems from bypassing established procedures and potentially making decisions without adequate information, which could lead to modifications that violate covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC and RS, or negatively impact the community's aesthetic standards. This undermines the authority of the ARC/board and sets a precedent for future noncompliance. Another incorrect approach is to reject all incomplete applications summarily without providing specific reasons or guidance on what is missing. While this adheres to the letter of requiring completeness, it lacks the professional courtesy and educational component expected of a community manager. This can lead to resident frustration, a perception of unreasonableness, and potentially more disputes, failing to foster a collaborative community environment. A further incorrect approach is to ignore the recurring pattern and continue processing applications as they come, regardless of completeness. This demonstrates a lack of proactive management and an abdication of responsibility to enforce the governing documents effectively. It allows inefficiencies to persist, potentially leading to more significant problems down the line, such as unapproved modifications that are difficult to rectify. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves 1. Identifying the problem and its root cause, incomplete submissions. 2. Consulting the governing documents to understand the established procedures and requirements for architectural review. 3. Developing or refining a clear, documented process that outlines submission requirements and the review timeline. 4. Communicating these requirements effectively to residents. 5. Consistently applying the established process to all requests. And 6. Documenting all interactions and decisions. This systematic approach ensures fairness, transparency, and compliance with the association's legal and operational framework.